What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Today, we'll be chatting with Ky Carlin of Locked On Sixers as the Philadelphia 76ers make the move and pick up James Harden from the Brooklyn Nets. Daryl Morey gets his guy again. What is that pairing with Joel Embiid going to look like out east? Are the Sixers now favorites to maybe make it out of the Eastern Conference? But first, a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline, because football might be over for this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next hired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Joining us now is one of the hosts of Locked On Sixers, Ky Carlin, who you can follow on Twitter at Ky_Carlin. Ky, I don't know how he did it, but Daryl Morey gets his guy, successfully trades for James Harden for not the first time, for the second time in his career. The Ben Simmons saga coming to an end. Ky, walk me through your immediate thoughts when it was announced that this trade, was made official, given all the lead up, all the build up, all the drama surrounding the Nets, the rumors swirling about. Just give me your immediate thoughts.
I was surprised it happened at the deadline. We all knew Harden was going to be a Sixer one way or another, right? So for me, it was like okay, they'll probably have their talks, but I feel like they're going to get it done at the deadline because it really seemed like Brooklyn was asking for a lot. Brooklyn was asking for Tyrese Maxey, they were asking for Matisse Thybulle, they were asking, for Seth Curry along with Ben. Obviously, they ended up getting Seth, but the fact that the Sixers were able to keep Tyrese and Matisse, like that's a huge deal considering, now that they've traded away Ben officially, the only defender they have is Matisse and in terms of perimeter defending. So the fact that they can bring in an explosive guy like James Harden now, and team him up with Joel and Tyrese and Matisse as a defender, Tobias Harris is like another scorer out there. It's a big move for sure. It's give credit to Morey. He was able to get it done.
In your eyes, how does this affect kind of the playoff race in the Eastern Conference? I mean, you've got Joel Embiid, who, in my opinion, is playing like this year's MVP and the best center in the league. That's no disrespect to Nikola Jokic, who is also having a phenomenal year, but Joel Embiid is just on another level this season. So you pair him with another arguably top 10 player in James Harden when fully healthy. And I kind of view the Sixers as, depending on, again, health permitting, I kind of view them as potentially the number one team in the East now.
But see, I don't, and it's because like outside of James and Joel, um, and James and Joel, like they also have a history of kind of coming up a bit small in big playoff moments. It's not just a James thing; it's a Joel thing too. So they still have a lot to prove. James is going to the Hall of Fame. I'm not saying James is like some scrub. Like James Harden is James Harden. What I'm saying is, if you look back at his playoff history, his numbers are great, but there was a specific moments. We all remember Game 7 against the Warriors. During his time in Houston, we all remember Game 7, even with the Nets last year against Milwaukee. Granted, he had an injury, but he shot 1 for 10, I think, in Game 7. So I mean, like there are some big moments where it's just like, damn, like is James going to be James? And then also, let's not forget Game 6 against the Spurs. Back I think it was 2016, I think it was, or 2014, something like that, when he like absolutely was awful at home against San Antonio. So that there are it's just little moments here and there where it's just like, damn, James. Actually, I think it was 2017, but it's just like, damn, James, like what's going on here? Um, but and Joel too, like Joel, we all remember Ben passing up the dunk in Game 7, but Joel had like 7 or 8 turnovers in Game 7 that night against Atlanta. So like that, there are still some questions that need to be answered. They also don't have a lot of time to get this thing down chemistry wise. If you remember, they traded for Tobias Harris 3 years ago at the deadline, and that starting five of Simmons, JJ Redick, Jimmy Butler, Harris, and Embiid only played 10 games together before the playoffs even started. So they obviously there's a lot of potential, but I like a lot of teams in the East more better than I like the Sixers at the moment.
Okay, that's fair, and you're the Sixers expert, so maybe I'm overshooting here in the hype surrounding surrounding I should say James Harden and Joel Embiid, and that what that pairing could potentially look like on the floor. But you kind of touched on it there. I do think there are a lot of kind of playoff demons that James Harden and Joel Embiid have to kind of exercise, and there's a lot of pressure on those two going into this postseason. But at this point, you mentioned, some of the other teams that you like ahead of them. How many teams do you currently put ahead of them in the pecking order of the Eastern Conference?
Well, for one, it has to be Milwaukee, right? That's the defending champs. Just added Serge Ibaka, which is I feel like a move nobody's really talking about. Ibaka is going to be like a really huge piece to Milwaukee's bench. Like you're adding a championship big man to your bench unit. Like that's an incredible move. They're also going to get Brook Lopez back at some point. I think I read in March the big man can come back. He hasn't played since opening night, and then all of a sudden the Bucks are healthy again. Um, so I look at Milwaukee and they have to be number one. I love Ben Simmons' fit in Brooklyn. I love it. The fact that he doesn't even have to shoot, it's not going to matter in Brooklyn. He's playing with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Also, the rumblings that the vaccine mandate could be lifted by the playoffs in New York City and Kyrie can play in home games. Like, I mean, you gotta look at Brooklyn too. I know they're on an 11-game skid, and it's like whatever, but they haven't had Durant. Obviously, Kyrie's a part-time player. There was the Harden thing, and now you're gonna put a team with Ben Simmons surrounded by Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Seth Curry, and potentially Joe Harris if he doesn't have to undergo a second surgery. Brooklyn's a dangerous team. And there's Miami. The Heat are the number one team in the East. That team made the NBA Finals 2 years ago, and they've been together. They know how to play with each other. There's chemistry there. And going back to Milwaukee, Milwaukee's played with each other for 3, 4 years now with Middleton, Holiday, Giannis, all those guys. And then you look at Chicago with Lonzo coming back soon, Levine, DeRozan. Like the Bulls are going to be tough, and the Cavaliers. And I know you're going to be like, Kai, it's the Cavaliers, and they just beat them last night. But when you look at it, Cleveland's got so much length, and you could tell it bothered the hell out of the Sixers on Saturday. That bothered the hell out of them. They just were able to get it done because Joel's Joel. But the Cleveland's length with Allen, Mobley, they didn't have Mark in him. But when he comes back and then Kevin Love off the bench, that bothered the hell out of the Sixers. So it's going to be there are some teams where I look at the East and I'm just like, I'm not putting Philadelphia in front and number one at all. Like, especially when you look at what's going on here.
There's a lot of talent in the Eastern Conference this year. For absolutely certain that the top heavy teams in the East. I mean, it's kind of a bloodbath out there. But going back to the Sixers here with Joel and with James Harden now, what about that dynamic fit between those two players are you most excited about seeing come to fruition on the court?
Probably the 2-man game, like the pick and roll between the two of them. Because that's gonna be deadly to stop. It's gonna be so hard to stop because it's like, are you going to stop Joel rolling to the basket, or are you going to stop him? And by the way, Joel can shoot jump shots. How are you going to stop him when he pops out? And then when you go with a hard closeout, he's going to pump fake and go straight to the basket and either get a bucket or you're going to foul him. Same thing with James. If you roll with Joel, you're going to leave James open for a step back for one of those penned step back threes, or you're going to allow him to drive to the basket and he's probably going to get fouled. So Sixers are going to foul out a lot of teams. I feel like. With these two guys. But like that's what I'm looking forward to the most. I'm looking forward to the shooting though, because without Seth, like again, you're relying on Matisse Thybulle to shoot the three ball. He shoots 30%. You're relying on Danny Green to kind of get back into a groove, and he's kind of been up and down this year because of various injuries and COVID and everything else. It's kind of been a tough year for him. And then you're also relying on Furkan Korkmaz, who's shooting like 28% from deep this year. So it's like, like I said, there are a lot of questions when it comes to this team that they need to be answered. And this is why, like, I'm not putting them number one, especially when you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference. By the way, I'm adding the Toronto Raptors in there as well. The Raptors have been sneakily very good this year. I forgot to add them in there. And Boston's been hot. So I don't know. The East is tough. The East is very tough.
I gave you like this olive branch to put the Sixers up on a pedestal, and you were like, whoa, 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 Jackson, we're not going there yet. So with that, I do you kind of talked about it there. I I feel like it cannot be overstated how important Seth Curry was for this team.
Yeah,
Obviously, you're getting James Harden back, so you
right.
have
Of
to make
course.
that deal 11 out of 10 times. But losing Seth, that's a big piece. Who was a big piece for the Sixers team.
Yeah, he was huge. I mean, he was having a down year. I put that in quotations, and he was shooting 40% from deep. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on. I mean, like 40% is a down year for a guy like Seth Curry. And also another thing too, Jackson, they don't have a backup big man anymore with the trade of Andre Drummond included in that Harden deal. And again, you do that 11 times out of 10, you're getting James Harden. But they have you can't rely on a 16-year vet and Paul Millsap to be the backup big man to Joel, or a second-year Paul Reed, who we all like Paul Reed, but he can't do it. Yeah, he can't fill that role. So now you got to wait for the buyout market. You got to see if a Tristan Thompson will shake free. You got to see if a Robin Lopez will be available, or any other proven big man. So yeah, there's a lot of questions to be answered about this team, man.
When can we expect James Harden and Paul Millsap to first suit up for the 76ers and make their debuts?
I don't really have an answer for that. Doc's really kind of been like, I'm not really sure. I've heard rumblings on maybe Tuesday against the Celtics. Thursday they're at Milwaukee. Actually gonna be taking the trip to Milwaukee when they take on the Bucks on Thursday, just in case that's his debut. But I've also heard rumblings that could be after the All-Star break. So I'm not really sure when James suits up for Philadelphia.
Well, you're going to keep us posted for all of that and more over at Locked On Sixers. Ky, thank you so much for joining me on Locked On NBA.
Jackson, thank you so much for having me on, man.